Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Neill. I'm the Director of College Counseling at Graded, the American School in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I am excited to be your moderator here today with a couple of panelists, Natasha Berg and Key Jones. And we'd like to just jump right into the topic of AI and helping students using it effectively and responsibly. But first, I'd like to let Natasha and Key introduce themselves. Key, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Absolutely. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Key Jones. I am the Chief Executive Officer at Black Girl AI, where we teach girls ages 8 to 18, and some of them turn 19, all about AI. Everything is all things AI. We tap a little bit in machine learning, but mostly everything is AI, especially ethics and responsibility using AI. So that's a little bit about Key.
Wonderful. And Natasha?
Yeah, hi. So I have a very weird job. I work at a private high school in South Dakota. And so I guess my technical job title is multimedia and technology integration specialist. But I teach, so I teach high school computer science as well as English. I run the library and I am the
Oh, wow.
technology and one-to-one coordinator for our school. So I have also been working with our school and our district on helping integrate AI into our education. And we're actually working on rolling out an initiative for next year on implementing a bunch of AI practices within our school building and a specific AI literacy curriculum at the high school level. So a little bit of everything, lots of hats that I wear, but I love it and wouldn't change a thing.
Awesome. Awesome.
Wonderful. And I'll just dovetail and just share that in addition to my job as director of college counseling here in Brazil, I'm also an AI aficionado. I run a weekly newsletter for high school college counselors that explores the intersection of technology and the field of college counseling. And of course, as of late, it is a heavy dose of AI. But that said, let's dive into some questions. Let's go, Natasha. Why don't you go first? What inspired you to begin working with students on AI literacy and ethical use?
Oh man, it's kind of a weird and wild journey, as I'm sure most of our stories are, just because of how fast AI came out once ChatGPT, went live back in November of 2022. It just kind of caught us all by surprise because nobody was expecting it. So I had actually, it was my first year in this new technology role. I had taught English the previous 5 years. So I was sitting around a table talking with the English teachers, and one of them was telling me how, oh yeah, this student just cheated using AI on an essay and it wrote the whole thing for them. And I was like, there's no way. No, no, that's not possible. That can't be done. And so then I started researching it, and sure enough, it can be done. And my mind was blown, as I'm sure most of ours were when we
Yeah.
first, experienced this technology. But I have always been kind of an educational technology nerd. And so, of course, I dove right into AI. And the more that I started researching, the more I realized this has a lot of ethical implications for us as educators, but especially for our students. Obviously, as we saw with the plagiarism that started cropping up and the schools
Yes.
taking and blocking AI and all of this stuff. So yeah, I just kind of ran with my research, and I ended up writing, a book chapter, doing a TED talk, and now I'm back in grad school because I wanted to write a dissertation on everything that's happening in the world of AI. So I think it's mainly, because of the environment I work in is why I was so drawn to this topic, but also just because I'm a nerd for it. So.
Wonderful. I think you might be in good company with a bunch of nerds on this call.
Yay!
Key, how did you begin working on this?
Now, for me, it was kind of personal. At Black Girl AI, what I saw, we saw brilliant, creative young girls, especially black and brown girls, and they were kind of feeling overwhelmed, invisible, but mainly they were very unsure about their place in the tech spaces. So when ChatGPT hit the scene, it was like we were all handed a very powerful tool, but no one stopped to hand us the blueprint. Like, how do we really and ethically use this tool? So right then and there, I knew that we couldn't afford to sit back and just watch things unfold by itself. we wanted the students not to just consume AI, but we also needed them, and we want to make sure that they understood it. They understood the power behind it, its pros and cons, but also its potential to elevate their voices without just erasing them. And that, that brings me to the college process. The college process is it's already high pressure, and AI shouldn't add confusion. It should add a little bit of clarity to all the things that's getting done, but all while using integrity.
Sure. Let's build on that, Key. Your work with Black Girl AI emphasizes empowerment and representation. How do you navigate that tension between AI generated content and authentic student voice?
I've reinforced, that the kids, use it as a tool. That's your bestie. I tell them, I say that's your bestie now. It's gonna help you get through anything that you could possibly need help with. But use it as a tool. Don't just put in a prompt. Make it personal, make it human, make it you. So that's how we do that.
Ah, good, good, good. And Natasha, let's just kind of keep popcorning this. What do you think the single biggest misconception is that students or even educators bring into how to use the AI in the college process?
Oh, that they can just use it to do everything for them and that it doesn't take any thought on their part. I think the biggest mistake that anybody, and not just high schoolers, but especially high schoolers, but also anybody that's kind of new to this technology makes is not including the human in the loop.
Yes.
And that's something that everybody that's been working with AI for a significant amount of time at this point, everyone talks about it. We have to include the human in the loop. It's not just something where you can mindlessly use this tool and claim the work as your own, because it's fallible and we know that it's biased and we know that it, spouts out lies and things like that. And yeah, it's getting better, but it's still not perfect. And I don't think it ever will be because it's trained by humans and humans are flawed. That's just human nature. We have flaws, and those flaws are reflected and then amplified in these machines. And so I think getting students to understand that has been the biggest
Yep.
hurdle with getting them to utilize these tools ethically and effectively.
Well, how do you help them recognize those boundaries in the work that you do, Natasha?
A lot of training and discussion. So I had the privilege, honestly, I considered it a privilege to teach an English class again this year because we were a little short-staffed, as is most of the country. But I was actually really excited to teach an English class again in the age of AI. And so I got to work with my students on using AI to help them with their writing. And so we really started the year with very open and honest discussions about the ethics of AI. I would give them scenarios, like, for instance, if I use AI to help me with a math problem that I've been stuck on, is that cheating? And so we would just have an open discussion about that in the class. And I gave a bunch of scenarios like this, and we came to a consensus as a class as to where we draw the line with AI usage and what we as users of this technology have to do in order to make sure that we're using it ethically and responsibly and avoiding, plagiarism in the work that it produces.
How about you, Key? How do you help with that sort of
Mm,
establishing the boundaries?
easily. Same thing as she said, we do scenarios a lot, but I think like the biggest misconception with the students is thinking that AI is magic. That's one of the
Mhm.
biggest misconceptions. And I just tell them it's not. AI is not a shortcut to you, to your voice, to your authenticity, nor it's not a threat either if it's used wisely. So another thing that I find is too many students think, if I just ask ChatGPT to write my essay, you know, it's going to get written and I can just use everything from there. And I just have to tell them you can't just do it. You can't do things like that. So but I let them know that's not a win. And also, speaking about educators, some educators fear even mentioning AI will lead to misuse, but I think we can all agree that the truth is, if we treat AI as off limits, the students will still use it just without guidance. So we need to meet them where they are, kind of like meet them in gray area, in those gray areas, and teach them how to use it ethically, transparently, and also very thoughtfully.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And that's something that we've been struggling with, you know, in education in general, but at our school especially. We have teachers, you know, especially our English teachers have been like, no AI.
Oh yeah.
And they put the kibosh on it. And I think, you know, you tell any kid, but especially teenagers, that they can't do something, well, they're gonna want to do it. Like immediately you tell them, no,
Anyway,
this is off limits, and they're like, oh, why? And they have to like figure it out on their own. And so I think it almost makes it like more alluring in a way when we tell them like, absolutely not, you can't use this, because they want to figure out like why, what's so wrong about it.
why?
Yeah. And so I think it's, you know, I think it's more important that we have open discussions with our students and allow them to use it, but train them how to use it
Yes.
responsibly instead of just putting a ban on it. That's not the way that we help our students achieve AI literacy
At
and,
all.
you know, digital responsibility. Yeah.
Right, because just just saying no, of course the nature in them gonna be like, here is George. Like, why are they telling us no? Why can't we use it? So let's find out why.
I'm the same way. You tell me I can't do something, and I'll be
Yes.
like, uh-uh.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Right.
Right. Right.
One of the things that we stumbled upon in our sort of conversations here at Graded with students, and I've shared this before, is actually key. We stopped trying to refer to AI as a tool. It's hard to
Uh-huh.
do, but we started
Okay.
referring to it as a thought partner. And the reason
That's a
for
good
that,
one.
and that resonated with kids, was uh, a tool can be used and a tool can be abused, but a thought
Right.
partner, you're not going to ask your thought partner to write your essay for you. You're not going to ask another human being in that regard, someone that you see in that light, to do the work for you, to do the hard work.
Hmm.
You're going to use it to get feedback. You're going to use it to get guidance, to point you in the right direction. So even like that subtle shift of not calling it a tool, but actually calling it a thought partner,
Hmm.
kind of frames things in a way where students begin to see almost naturally where that boundary, where that line is between what they can and can't do. I'd love to hear your
Right.
thoughts on that.
I totally agree with that. And that's why I kind of started using the word bestie, because it's like you're going to ask your bestie to help you, but you're not going to ask your bestie to do your homework for you. So that's where my word came in at. But that's great. I like that, Jeff.
Yeah. And so, Natasha, have you personally encountered any scenarios where students submitted AI generated work, and how do you handle that?
Oh yeah, definitely. A conversation. So
Yeah.
because I work with it so much, it's very obvious and clear to me when a student submits something that's AI generated that they put absolutely no human in the loop.
Hmm.
And so I had a couple of incidents at the beginning of the year with a student who was new to our system. And so I just talked to him one on one. I said, "Hey, can you walk me through your process of how you wrote this?"
Hmm.
And you know, he was honest, because when you face to face them and you open up a dialogue about it, it's like, okay, so you used AI. Did you go in and read it? Did you put any personal thought into it? Do you think that this sounds like you? Or
Hmm.
I'll ask students, what I love is when students use words that I know they don't know. And so I'll be like, I'll just walk up to it and I'll be like, hey, can you tell me what this word means? And then when they
Mm,
give you that blank stare, you're like, okay, yeah, I know you didn't write this.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
yeah,
that's
it's a
the way.
conversation. Yeah, it's a conversation that I open up. I try not to criticize. I just try to talk about why, you know, what they did was, you know, maybe not the most ethical choice that was
Hmm.
made. And we talk about, you know, why did they make that choice and how can we improve it going forward? And then of course, what are the consequences going to be? Because all of our actions have consequences, be them positive or negative. So I just kind of try to approach it from an
I
open
like.
dialogue perspective.
Yes, and I had a very similar story, and I'll never forget it because that one particular student, it was a very, very beautiful and very structured, well essay, but it lacked soul, and it kind of lacked that human touch, So I, I read it like a polished product, but it wasn't a very personal story to me. So the student, they admitted that they heavily use AI, but the reason why they said they used it is because they didn't think that their own words were good enough. That moment was very touching and very powerful to me. It touched me. For a kid to say that they didn't think that their words were good enough. So we did away with the draft, and we rebuilt it together. We did it together. I actually helped them. And at that moment, the student learned that AI can help organize your thoughts, but only you as the student can share your truth. So I just wanted to share that one piece, because it was very touching when that student told me that their words weren't good enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's, and I feel like a
beautiful.
lot of students feel that way too. Like in my English class this year, one of the most powerful comments that we got when we started working with AI was I
Mhm,
heard a student, they prompted the AI to write for them and they're reading it over and they go, "This doesn't sound like me." And I
mhm,
honed in on that. I was like, exactly. Why? And how can we fix that? Like, what do we need to do in order to make this sound genuinely like our voice? And so it opened up a discussion. And I think that's definitely part of the problem is that the students aren't using their authentic voice when they're relying on these tools or this technology to basically do the work for them. So.
right, right.
For sure. Now, kind of elevating it to how do you see the difference between your sort of and I'd say, Natasha, what it sounds like is a pretty safe environment for a student to make mistake
Yes.
in their classroom, and how do you differentiate that between that and the college process, the college application process? How do you see the differences, and what fears do you hold?
Oh man. Yeah, that's a tough question. So, I think a lot of students, kind of like what Key was mentioning, is they lack that soul in especially their college essays. And I think as, somebody who would work in college admissions, you would really be able to tell those that generated with AI because it's going to lack that personality. It's going to lack that, that character, I think is the best word. Like the student's character isn't going to be coming through. It's going to feel very generic.
Mhm.
So I think students are just facing so much pressure from so many
Yeah.
angles these days. They're expected to, they're working at a higher level than any other class of students before. And I think we don't acknowledge that enough as educators. Like we're putting so much pressure on these poor kids and they have to be involved in all these things. And then they still have to write all these essays to all these places that they're applying. And so I think a lot of them just panic and
Mm,
they just use this AI because they're just trying to manage everything and they're not sure how. So I don't know that I have the answers for how we go
Yeah.
about fixing this, honestly,
yeah,
but I think just acknowledging it and talking about it like we are is a step in the right direction for sure.
I want to piggyback off of that a bit, Natasha. I agree with everything you said. Um, but it reminds me one time when I had a student tell me like, oh my God, like the world, everything is just moving so fast paced. Like I can't give my all to this essay, so I just use AI to do it. Like they're like, we don't have time. I'm like, oh, I never stopped to think about that. We think that we have a lot on our plate. The students do as well.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a confounding variable moving forward. And we have, of course, universities. I'll point to Duke, having said as one of the reasons they moved the personal essay away from their evaluated component of their student application was
Oh,
out
that's
of
great.
AI. So they still ask for the essays, but they don't include it as an evaluated component in a student's application review.
That's
From
so
my end, I'm hearing increasingly from folks from university admissions reps that they're seeing a great increase in obviously AI influenced written personal statements. From our end, what we're also sort of what is really causing us to question is this college essay, this personal statement, reflective writing about you at your best. Um, Often our students don't have a lot of practice doing it. They're writing
right.
more structured, expository essays for English class, and write an evaluation of a piece of literature, not an awful lot about themselves. And I think that actually might increase the allure of using artificial intelligence in that process for a lot of students, because they know they can get to that endpoint a little bit quicker without having to
Yes.
do that soul searching. And as you said, the essays lack soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's
So
uncomfortable to talk about yourself. I
it
mean,
is.
most people are uncomfortable. And I think, especially as teenagers, when they're still so insecure
Yes.
in who they are in the world, like, yeah, that's a really uncomfortable thing. I wouldn't want to write an essay about myself, would you guys? Like, that's not my wheelhouse.
No, at that age, I didn't want to either. So
Right?
I
Yeah.
agree.
For
Yes.
sure. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Key, particularly about the idea of, as I think Natasha made reference to earlier,
Mhm.
the challenges with the bias inherent within AI. Um, how do you work with students to identify, fact check, acknowledge the inherent biases that exist within as Natasha framed, human created technology?
Pretty much, we kind of build skills and awareness at the same time. We teach them, always pause and ask whose data possibly trained this model, what perspectives might be missing. So when students start recognizing those biases and those power structures and excess gaps within the systems that they're using, they become, not just consumers of AI, but I always talk about that critical thinking piece that I don't want them to ever use. Please do not lose your critical thinking skills. My goodness. I harp on that so much. I talk about it, the kids be like, you've already said that 1,000 times. And I be like, well, I'm gonna keep saying it because I don't want you to lose your critical thinking skills. So, we want them to be future change makers in tech. So at Black Girl AI, especially with working with the students, they don't often see themselves reflected in certain spaces. So we're very, very, very intentional about making sure that they see that AI is not only something that they can use, but it's something they can shape, they can question, but they can also reimagine.
Interesting. And Natasha, how would you sort of, how is your sort of program that you're working on and developing help with, hallucinated or biased AI output with your students?
Just making them aware of it. I think a
Mhm.
lot of students view AI as infallible. A lot of our students are using it as like Google. It's their new Google. And I
Mhm.
mean, Gemini now being integrated with Google, it basically is. It's our new Google. And so they think that everything that it outputs is accurate. And so just having that conversation with them that it's not and that it is flawed, kind of blows their mind a little bit. And then what we're kind of building into this, AI literacy unit that we're implementing next year is we're going to show them how it can produce biases, by generating some pieces of writing to have them analyze and just kind of highlight and point out where it's flawed in its logic or its thinking or where it's bringing in biases or misinformation and stuff like that. So I think it's critical to just have again those candid conversations, back to those candid conversations with students, because a lot of them just don't know because this technology is so new and people are just so scared to talk about it or don't feel like they have enough knowledge to talk about it, that it's just at this point it's ignorance. Like we literally just don't know.
Yes.
For sure. That it's interesting. It makes me think of sort of an experience that we've been having here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We have students of a certain generation, and then we've got teachers
Mhm.
kind of spanning maybe three different generations, arguably. And each generation seems to have its own sort of particular proclivities towards how to use AI. I'm kind of solidly in the Gen X category, and that means I think by definition I'm skeptical of everything. Whereas what we're finding with our students is it's a kind of exactly what you said, Natasha. It's the new Google. It's single line input. And I'll give an example. A student I was with in college counseling class just the other day. What is the early decision application deadline for a particular university? And it gave an answer, and the answer was wrong on two different counts. It was the wrong date, and there was no early decision at this particular school. So it was
Wow.
this, they started writing it down on this worksheet that we were having them do. And I was like, wait a minute. You can't you can't take it on, and that was a chat GPT output.
Mhm.
At least I think with like Perplexity AI or Gemini, sometimes it'll at least tell you where it got the information. You can sort of fact check that.
Yes,
But
Claude does also.
Claude
Very
does
good.
as well.
Yes. Hmm.
So we've run into this problem with like fear that our students in this sort of Google mindset, single sort of entry point, assume that it's on the internet, it must be accurate. How have you guys encountered that and experienced that?
I think I don't know when we gonna ever be able to come to common ground when it comes to stuff like this, because everybody's just so different. Like me, I'm not that old, but I'm like right in the middle, so I'm old school, and I still believe in a lot of old school ways, but the youth today is just different. So it's gonna forever be a clash. I don't know if you guys have something that you can maybe advise, but I don't know when we're gonna be able to come to common ground on this, because some of the professors are set in their ways, the students
Yep.
are set in their ways. Like it's it's gonna forever be a clash. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a comment that I kind of want to highlight because yes, absolutely. So, Amy said, why not encourage students to just go to the school website to find out the accurate information? AI seems to make people lazier and less curious and creative. So, talking about those generational differences, I will just say I am a millennial and I am so grateful that I am because I grew up without technology and I got to witness the evolution of technology up to this point. So
Yes.
I didn't have, a smartphone until I was 21. And I was, I remember driving around a new city with the printed Google Maps. And that is
Yes.
like such a foreign concept to kids these days. Like they have no idea what I'm talking about. They're
They
like,
will laugh at us to the
I
end.
I told that to some of my students the other day, and they're like, oh my gosh, I could never imagine. I would get lost. And I'm like, I don't know, you figure it out, right? So we have
Right.
different skills. I think it's a different skill set. And I think that's where the misunderstanding comes in, is like, so Jeff, because you're maybe of the older generation that grew up without technology. You really had
Yes.
to learn to rely on fact checking yourself and making
Hmm.
sure you found the information in multiple places. My generation is kind of in this sweet spot where I'm right in between that and then also between the new generation, the Gen Zers, where they grew up with the internet. And everything that you ever needed to know, you found with a little device that you
That.
had in your pocket, which was such a foreign concept to me when I was growing up, right? So I think it's more of like this huge diversity between how we grew up. And I think where the AI comes in, I wouldn't say that our students are lazy. Obviously, there's always lazy students. Okay. We all know that one kid that just will do anything to get out of the work. But I think
Yes.
in general, AI does not make our students lazy because they grew up with technology that can do all of these incredible things,
Mhm.
literally with just typing, a question in. They think that AI is the same. And I think that is where we are dropping the ball when it comes to having discussions with students. We have to emphasize when we're teaching them about AI that it is not Google. It is not the same. And even when, I look at this as a redo because when the
Mhm.
internet came out, it was such a new technology that
Yes.
nobody knew what to do with it. We were all like, what? We did not do our due diligence teaching our students how to be responsible digital citizens. We did not. We dropped the ball in a massive way. AI is our chance to pick that ball up and to redo our shot. Like we have to use this as our opportunity to teach our students how to use these tools responsibly and how to
Yes.
be, good digital citizens because we missed the ball with the internet explosion. So this is our chance to redo it. So I don't think it's lazy. I think it's
Right.
more of just a difference in how we were raised.
That's right. Right. Right.
Yeah,
I totally agree today, because we don't want to sound hypocritical, because we were not taught either how to be good digital citizens. So
right.
we're all learning. We're all still kind of learning. So, but I agree. Oh, and
Yeah.
to add to that, I had a beeper. I didn't have a cell phone.
We have the whole range here. I love this. This is great.
I had a beeper.
Well, to kind of build on that a little bit, my one of my first jobs straight out of college was working in educational technology at a school, and my job, frankly, was to teach some very old school, to use your word, teachers to make PowerPoints and move their overhead laminates to a projector and a computer. And my boss at the time, I said, well, we need to teach the students. The students need to learn how to do these things as well. And his comment was, we need to integrate this into all their classes. My intention at that point was, I think we need to have a class, like a technology class. And he said, no, that doesn't make sense. We don't have a class called the pencil when we're teaching kids how to write. We need to integrate it into all of the different disciplines. And you can take issue with that lens, but that was a long time back. But my question is now we've made reference to it, but what does AI literacy look like in today's day and age in your minds? What are those skills? What are those attributes that we do want our students to develop?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I can speak to this because yeah,
go ahead, Natasha.
I've been working on this a lot. Our school, like I said, is trying to implement an AI literacy, curriculum next year, and we're putting the burden on our English teachers, and I feel bad about that because I feel like our English teachers are already so burdened with everything. But what it looks like is kind of a lot of what we've already been discussing. So having candid conversations with students about what AI is capable of and what it's not capable of, emphasizing that student in the loop aspect of working with AI. And then I think an important one that we haven't really touched on yet is teaching our students how to prompt the AI. Because that is such a vital component of AI use that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. Like, I think the ethics thing and the bias thing that has been talked about more and more now, but now it's the prompting because you can't just type a question like you can in Google. And so that's a conversation that I have with my students as well. I'm very specific with them when we talk about AI prompting. We have a whole day, a whole lesson on AI prompting. And that's kind of where that comment from my student I mentioned earlier, like this doesn't sound like me. That was the lesson that came in on. And I said, okay, well, let's go look back at our prompt and figure out where can we tweak it to make it sound more like us, or what can we do to
Yes.
make it sound more like us. So Key, I don't know if you have anything to add about AI prompting or.
No, I just want to say, I just always aware of them. It's not just about knowing what ChatGPT is. It's also about asking, ask the questions. Who made it? What data trained it? What's the possible impacts? And just letting them know that we can embed AI across every subject. But again, it's about critical thinking, not just coding. So that's what I try to remind them as well.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, it's interesting, this idea of prompting. I'll tell a story just from last week. I teach a class in the U.S. at UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program on college counseling for international students, and I have a heavy dose of artificial intelligence in the course. And some of the discussions, the students will kind of copy and paste their AI generated output and be very critical of it. And what they're missing is beyond this, the prompting is the iterative nature of it. If the output
Yes.
that you get is not good enough or isn't what you're looking for or is off in some way, sort of continuing to challenge it to make it better, to make it to improve it. And I think that sort of mono prompting of Google has been sort of ingrained in their heads that it's one and done, and then I move on to my next topic. And it's funny because I think that's another challenge, getting them to ask the right questions, but then dealing with the output in an iterative fashion, going back and challenging it. Have you seen students
True.
struggle with that as well?
Yes. I always try to remind them the sauce is in the prompt. It's what you put in. You feed it garbage, that's what it's gonna spit back out to you. So I try to remind them, you create great prompts. You feed it great prompts, and that's what you're gonna get. That's where your sauce is at, in the prompt.
Yeah, and we definitely have that conversation too. So the AI educator, his name is Dan Fitzpatrick. He has he calls it the 5S prompting model. And I actually use that with my students. So I don't, Jasmine, if you can maybe find that, it's the AI educator Dan Fitzpatrick 5S prompting model, and maybe paste it in the chat for everyone. But he does some great stuff. I have it like on my screen here. But so the 5S's are set the scene, be specific, simplify your language,
I like that.
structure the output, and then share feedback. And I think like when I'm working with my students on prompting, the share feedback component is one that we really have to talk about because they do struggle with that a little bit. It's like if you don't like what you get, how can you, revise your prompt a little bit or respond to the AI saying, okay, well, I didn't like this. Let's tweak this a little bit. And
Right.
I think that's a gold mine for AI. I love that aspect about AI is that we are working, like he said, it's your bestie, it's your partner, it's your thinking partner. And so having that back and forth conversation is not something that I think any of us are comfortable with. And that's why I say that we do need to teach our students how to do that, kind of train them on that aspect.
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting to kind of head in this direction, so there's clearly like an obligation that we're calling out about teaching students the technical skills of AI, prompting, iteration. But what's our obligation in terms of more of the societal impact, the ways in which AI is sort of impacting our community more broadly outside of just their specific use cases? Do you spend much time, Natasha, talking with students about that and the way that it's arguably, according to lots of front page articles, changing culture, changing humanity?
Yeah, we do. But I also think that's why it's important to teach our students. And I talk to them about that. I say, you're going to be entering a workforce and we don't know what it's going to look like. It's already changing. AI is already integrating its way into our global commerce, our global societies, and it's shifting the way that businesses run. And so I think that's where a heavy burden falls on us as educators is because we truly are preparing our students for a future we know nothing about. And granted, that's how it's always been, but it feels even more burdensome now with this age of AI. I would feel remiss to not point out the environmental implications of AI as well. And that's also something I discuss with my students because if they know that every time they're prompting an AI machine for an output, that they are wasting, resources, because the amount of resources and environmental damage that are being done by these massive AI machines is not something that I feel like is discussed enough. So that's also a conversation I have with my students, just so that they're aware that they're not using it frivolously. They're not using it. They
Right.
use Google because that's not how it should be used. Like you want to make sure when you're using it, you're being very conscientious about how you use it and why you're using it because it is utilizing resources.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I want to pause and quickly go to a question that came in the chat, which I think is germane and relevant right now. Amy asks, I'm just wondering where privacy comes into play in terms of where something one puts into AI goes out into the AI verse and becomes part of how AI learns. How have you had effectively worked with students or adults on this particular concept?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Natasha.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Mhm.
I I don't let my students create accounts on any AI platform. We don't have, so it's a little complicated, but basically, like ChatGPT now has an education platform where
Mm-hmm.
they won't be using the student prompts in order to train the AI, but everything else is used to train the AI. So we do have that discussion before I even allow my students to go on an AI platform. We talk about the privacy concerns. I tell them, you should never be putting private information anywhere on the internet, but especially not in AI. We have to do our due diligence as these
Yes,
digital citizens to make sure that what we're putting in is going to be something that we don't mind coming back out.
that's right.
Maybe in other conversations elsewhere. So yes, privacy is a huge concern. I only let my students use the free version of ChatGPT, which is kind of terrible, honestly. So that honestly makes my job easier because I'm like, yeah, I'm letting you use it, but they don't know that it's actually garbage that I'm letting them use. And Perplexity, you can also utilize without creating an account. So any AI platforms they can use without creating an account, I am all for. But then there's a lot of education platforms that utilize AI. School AI is one of my favorites
Yes.
to use, especially for writing, because I can control the AI. I basically am programming the AI to do what I want it to do. So if I want to use AI to help students write a college essay,
Mhm.
I can do it so that the AI will not actually write the essay for them, but will act as a partner going back and forth with them to help
Yes.
them generate ideas. So school AI is my favorite, and it is safe for students to use. It protects their privacy. They don't have to create an account to use it. Only I, as the teacher, have the account, and I can see all of the conversations the students are having with the AI, which is why I personally love that one.
I
How about
agree.
you, Keith?
I was going to tap into school AI too because that's my favorite one and they vary privately, but Natasha tapped on it, so it's good.
All right. Um, so are there other AI tools or resources that you find to be particularly valuable that we might share with our audience here?
I would think so, but I think a lot of people are already using it, which is one of my favorites is Khan Academy, not Khan Academy Kids. Oh God, I'm thinking about my grandbaby now because I that's what she used a lot, Khan Academy Kids. But also Khan Academy, Khan Migo, and even Grammarly. You know, and there are a lot of AI voice tools that read drafts out loud, that can make a huge difference for students who don't have access to private tutors or even college counselors. Um, at Black Girl AI, we build culturally relevant prompts so students can explore topics that matter to them on identity, resilience, leadership, within their communities. So AI doesn't have to replace support. I always tell them, it amplifies it when it's used intentionally.
Mhm.
So those three, Grammarly, Camigo, and Khan Academy.
And yeah, I feel so bad for educators right now because the amount of AI platforms out there is extremely overwhelming. So it's like, how do you
Yes, it
sift through all of this, especially if you're new to AI or you're just starting to explore it? It is exhausting. So it just depends on what you're wanting to use it for. So from the education standpoint, I really like Magic School AI
mhm,
is one of my favorites as a teacher because it can create a bunch of resources for me. They also have just developed a student platform as well, which I don't have as much experience with because, again, I prefer school AI if I'm going to use a student-based platform. But
yes.
then as far as like writing goes, since we are, kind of focused on the college essay here, I love using revision history. And unfortunately, it was in beta mode, so it was free. Now it's not free. It's a freemium at this point, but it's integrated with Google Docs, which we're at a Google
Mhm.
school. So I love it because I can use it integrated with my students' Google Docs, and I can see anytime they copy and paste information from somewhere else. I can see exactly how much time they spend on their writing. If you've heard of Draft Back before, it's like Draft
Yes.
Back but better. It's a much more it's a much better version of Draft Back essentially, and that's revision history. So those are kind of my go-tos that I use every day is School AI, Magic School, revision history, and then just generally Chat GPT for my own work. So.
For sure. Yeah. And it was about a year and a half ago, I read an article that said, through a meta search of Google, that there were over 400,000 websites, unique URLs that were claiming to be run on artificial intelligence. I can't imagine what that number is at this point. So the overwhelm is real. Each week in my newsletter, I put out 5 new different AI tools that an educator, college counselor might use, and the list for
Goes
upcoming
on
news is
and on.
endless. It's just keeps going. It's unbelievable. So, um,
Oh, it is.
so there's a few really good ones. Some I think I could also categorize those as being pretty popular. But there are some niche ones that have been popping up, but particularly in the college counseling domain. It seems like every week I get an email from somebody new who's using AI in the college counseling domain, one way, shape, or form. But to kind of come back, we've only got a few minutes left before we want to open up to questions from the audience. But I would say let's ask, sort of get back to the college application process. Um,
Hmm.
how do we model for our students effective use of artificial intelligence um, when it comes to that college application process? What does that look like for you as educators, thinking about students using it for essays, for resumes, for all sorts of things that are germane to the college application process? What does that modeling look like?
Um, I would just kind of remind them, to enhance their voices. Don't erase it. Don't hide behind a tool or don't hide behind your bestie.
Mm-hmm.
Use it to ask better questions if you need to. If you need to, I'm sorry, to kind of organize your story. Let's say structure ideas. But at the end of the day, the application should reflect them and only them, their story, their truth, and their growth. Because that's what college admissions counselors, that's what they really want to see. So that would be a good thing to remind them.
That's great.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna have Jasmine share a link. I don't have access to everyone. So that link is to a presentation that I recently gave on how to avoid AI plagiarism in writing. And it really walks through my process with teaching students how to approach writing any sort of
Great.
personal essay. So whether it be for college admissions or, whether it be in a, expository essay for English class, whatever it is, and I'm just going to keep coming back to that human in the loop because it's so
Yes.
important.
Human voice.
Yeah, I think that like when we're working with students and when we're modeling it, it really has to be human in the loop. So
Yeah.
I usually have my students start with their own ideas. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason why is because I always tell them like I need to know that you can think critically on your own without support from this tool. Like you need to show me that your thoughts that you're inputting are your original thoughts. So then I have them think critically, input their thoughts, and then once they get the output, I again have them come back to it and be like, okay, now make it sound like you. How do we make this sound like you? So it's that constant like back and forth, that bestie, back and forth that I try to model for them. And I really do, whatever grade level I'm working with, be it freshmen or seniors, I model the process for them. Like I do it with them. I'm making sure that I'm understanding their perspective as well. So I usually write the essays alongside the students so that we can troubleshoot together. So yeah, I think that the human in the loop is key.
And they love that. They love when you sit there and you give them that one-on-one. Like we get down to their level. Because
Yeah.
like I said, a lot of them, think their words don't sound right. It doesn't match, seem like they feel like they can't do something. So when we get down to their level, they love that.
Mhm.
For sure. Well, let's go with one more question, and then we'll open it up to the audience for their Q&A. And we have some pre-populated questions, but just to kind of conclude our kind of little section before we go to the Q&A, what's one myth that about AI in education that you wish we would let go of?
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people will let go that AI will replace great teachers. No, never, never. No great educators will be replaced by AI. If it's anything, they will be enhanced by it. So the myth that AI is here to take over the classrooms, strip away humanity, that's just a big fear bluff. But actually, in reality, when educators use AI intentionally and responsibility, it opens up more space for connection, creativity, and of course, those critical thinking conversations.
Yes.
That's great.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I would say for me, I wish we would release the myth that all students are cheating using AI. They're not. I sent out an anonymous survey to all of my high school students, and some of the feedback that I got back from that, the students are just as uncertain and nervous about this technology as we are. And I think that we underestimate them a lot of the times. So I wish that we could just get rid of that myth. Yeah, there's always going to be those students that cheat, no matter what. There
Yes.
always will be. There always have been, and there always will be. But for the most part, that's not how our students are using it. So I wish we could get rid of that myth.
Yeah, I would jump in and say very much related is that idea that artificial intelligence is somehow reducing human connection.
Mm.
And the share that the thing that I would want to share is at the end of each year we do a survey with of our seniors as they're graduating, and one of the questions we ask is, how well do you think your college counselor knows you? More as a metric of connection and being seen. And we ask them the questions like the best, top 3, top 5, top 10, outside of the top 10, I think, are the answers. And over the last 2 years, we haven't yet graduated, so we haven't asked this year. So this was last year's class as compared to 2 years ago. We saw a significant increase in the way in which our students saw us as being a trusted, valued ally support for them. And when we went back to try to figure out why that was, the only answer that we could give was we had fully implemented artificial intelligence in many, I'd say, rote, mundane tasks that was then allowing us to put in more face time with our students, to be more present, to, as Key was kind of suggesting, to be there for them, to in
Mhm.
those relationships very clearly in a very measurable way, improved significantly. So that those are all kind of, I think, some fears that are all kind of part and parcel to the same vision. And so wonderful. So that said, audience, please, if you have questions, put them in the
I would
chat.
like to answer a question that came in by someone from the audience. They were interested in hearing what guidance colleges are providing about the use of AI in student applications, how it can be used for brainstorming essay topics, fixing grammar, also improving the activity list so that college counselors can guide students appropriately. And to answer that question, right now it kind of varies by institutions. But there are a few common threads that I see pop up all the time. AI can be used for brainstorming and editing, but not for writing the entire drafts. So colleges still expect their students' authentic voices to shine through, especially in their personal essays. Um, some college admissions officers have said, we don't mind if AI is used to help you polish a sentence, but we want to hear your story, your growth, and your passion. So I always kind of encourage them to check directly with your top target schools. But here's a rule of thumb that I also share with the students. If you feel like AI did the thinking for you, it probably went too far. So counselors can empower students to use AI like a mentor, not the magician.
Mm.
No, that's great. The mentor, not the magician. I love that.
Right,
The
yes.
That's really great. And I think coming back to that sort of modeling usage and sort of giving direct instruction to students on what's appropriate. Um, you know, One of the examples that we give is it's not okay to copy and paste output from ChatGPT into your college application, but what is acceptable in most domains is putting in your near final draft of a college essay and asking ChatGPT to act as a college admissions officer and to give me 3 points of critical feedback for how I might improve this essay, or how I might make it more relevant to the prompt, or how I might improve my own voice in this essay. What's the difference between asking ChatGPT to do that and asking me as a college counselor, asking their English teacher, asking a parent, sibling? Um, and in regards to the college's guidance, it is still very sparse. Those, I serve on the AI and college admissions special interest group for NACAC, which is why I'm hosting this, and we're collecting those, but they're those policies and those practices. But we don't really have a ton of them. It's slow in the coming. Georgia Tech, Boston University, Virginia Tech, Caltech, all I think got ahead of it to talk about it specifically in the application process. And really, the underlying theme was, as what was suggested by Key, is responsible use was what's being advocated for. Some are more explicit about what is and is not appropriate, but some of it's just pretty general. So and then, yeah, and Jasmine just put in the chat we have a Padlet with all the policies that we've collected so far that you can sort of access there. So wonderful. So kind of get back to there was a few given questions. Key just addressed one of them.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear 3 key tips on using AI effectively to share with my high school students as they approach essay writing.
Oh, cool. Let's see. One would be always remind them to start with their story, and just advise them, don't prompt the tool until you brainstorm the truth. AI is should support your message, not create it for you. Um, Another one I can possibly give: use it to stretch, not swap your voice. Ask, remind the students that they can ask AI things like, "How else could I say this?" Or, "Can you help me improve this paragraph?" That's how you revise without losing your authenticity. One last thing, just try to remind them to be reflective. Always, 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 always review what AI spits out to you. And then once it spits it out to you, ask yourself, does this really sound like me? And again, if the answer is no, that means rewrite it. Don't rely on it. That's the 3 things I would give.
How about you,
Yeah.
Natasha?
Oh, well, I've kind of been touching on a lot of
Yeah.
mine throughout this conversation, and my 4 points essentially are shared in that PowerPoint that was shared in the chat earlier. But for those that don't have access to that, I'll just say my 4 points in that PowerPoint. The first one's educate yourself. So that's more a teacher thing because obviously we have to be comfortable with the tools before we can share them with our students. Those candid AI conversations. So that's of course, like talking about everything that we've kind of discussed, the human in the loop, the ethics, the biases, the responsible AI use, all of that. So candid conversations. And then is choosing the effective tool. So what AI tool is going to be most effective for me at this point in the essay? Because ChatGPT is kind of a catch-all. It's what we go to because it was the first one that was publicly released for use, but it may not be the most effective for what you're wanting. I always direct students towards Perplexity if they're doing research because it
That's it.
does give the sources and it does a really nice job with that. If they're looking for just like a kind of a brainstorming partner, I think ChatGPT is great for that. If they're wanting, if they're doing something that I specifically want to control from my end, school AI. So it kind of depends. Like, so choosing the effective tool is number 3. And then number 4 is more complex prompts. And I think that kind of, I give that point for the teacher perspective, like the more complex we make our prompts, the harder it is for students to use AI to write it for them. But also we can talk about more complex prompting with our students. How can we enhance our prompt that we're putting into the AI in order to get something more detailed and specific out that's going to, help us in the long run?
Great
Absolutely.
answers. Great answers. Well, with that, there was one additional question that was about how do I get started with different tools in getting students to work on college essays, on activities lists, without allowing them to lose their authentic voice. And we have touched on a lot of those different things. But the one I'll jump in on this one just with the last couple seconds here. In my newsletter, and maybe Jasmine, it sounds self-serving, but can you throw the link in to my sign up for my newsletter? Um, I do share prompts answering this question pretty much every week. How can we better utilize, prompting ourselves as educators, as college counselors, but also empower our students to use it effectively? And I love talking about the BB's activity, and it's an acronym from the college essay guy. If you haven't ever encountered him, it's an acronym that stands for the best extracurricular activities brainstorm I ever saw. And his is in the format of a really long series of questions that students are meant to ask. And one of the things I did was, with his permission, of course, I took that and rendered it into kind of a mega prompt. And what it does is it goes through and asks students in an iterative fashion, one question at a time, to ask them, what activity are we going to talk about? And then it kind of goes through and continues to ask questions, continues to get the student to talk about what was valuable, how they contributed, what did they achieve. And it takes about 6 or 7 minutes for a student to go through one activity. And the output is, on one hand, partially a resume bullet point, but it also helps craft those pesky 150 character common application activities descriptions. So that's just a one sort of particular example. But that said, we are perfectly at time, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Key, Natasha and I were talking about how we felt this could have been a 2-hour conversation. But we are at time. And so I would like to, on behalf of the AICA, thank Key and Natasha for joining me
No
on
problem.
this conversation, and look forward to exchanging ideas further on down the road. Thanks so much for all of you, the attendees, and best
Thank you.
wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Have a good day, everyone.